So I will go ahead now and call this meeting of the Council Budget and Finance Committee to order. Let the record reflect that all three members of the committee are present. With that, we'll move to public comments. I don't see that there are any attendees at this meeting. And they could be here right now if they were wanting to, right? I mean, okay, so unless one of the members wants to make a comment or anybody who is here, we will move on to our agenda items. Approval of the minutes of the April 21st meeting.
I will move the item.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? I'm in favor. The motioner and seconder are in favor.
Aye.
Those minutes are approved. And we also had the special meeting of April 26th.
I will move the items.
Okay,
Item.
all in favor? Everybody's in favor. I am, and so those are approved. And so now we will move on to our major agenda item of the day, and that is a discussion of the how is it characterized here? COVID-19 funding update. Yeah.
All right. Good evening, everybody. I've got a short slide presentation that we can walk through, and then have a more robust conversation here at the end. Being that this is the only item tonight, I don't expect that we will have too long of a meeting, but we'll go as long as we need to and answer all the questions that we want to. So I will go ahead and start my presentation here. Oh, I gotta share my screen. 1 second. First timer, apparently. Uh-oh.
Haven't you learned to share your screen yet? That's as bad as not unmuting.
I need the host to allow me to share the screen, my screen here. So
who's the host?
Okay, Dustin, I made you a host as well, covering for Chrissy.
Got it. Thank you. All right.
That was Hayward Webinar speaking. Hello, Hayward Webinar. Welcome. But I think we're all a little, I know I'm a little like, overly tired tonight. So
now we're cooking with gas. So as you mentioned, Mayor, providing an update on COVID-19. We're going to focus mostly on expenditure and activities undertaken by the city, more so than necessarily the funding recovery, but I can certainly speak to that in any questions that you all may have. This slide shows a summarized version and most definitely not a fully comprehensive version of everything that the city's undertaken during the COVID-19 pandemic, but some of the things that we really wanted to highlight to the committee that we felt were most impactful to the community, and hopeful, in that we provided, my opinion, services above and beyond that of most agencies to the community to aid with everything that folks have gone through when it comes to dealing with the day-to-day life of the pandemic. Most notably, very, very early in the pandemic, I think that we were actually the first in the country to host a free mobile testing site. Those testing sites have shifted. They've moved a couple times, and now have shifted to vaccination. Sorry, easy for me to say. Sites for folks to come, with partnering with the county, as well as a couple other agencies. So also, obviously, the food distribution site was huge in helping folks dealing with wage loss and trying to feed their families during a very tough time. I will say comprehensively here, we did quite a bit to help in keep folks in their homes, including rent relief, throughout the pandemic. Did a lot for our small businesses and trying to keep folks going throughout the program through a variety of grant programs. Also helped the community by offering a COVID-19 hotline, which has run for over a year now, answering questions. At the height of the pandemic, it was a room as full as could be reasonably and safely possibly filled, so that we could answer as many calls as possible. And that's how we had a lot of folks who were unable to perform their everyday, day-to-day normal duties, busy and serving the Hayward community. That's kind of an overview of what was done. Like I said, not at all a full listing of everything that's been undertaken. We're planning to put more of that together for the budget and brief that we will provide to council, that will have some additional details similar to some of the information that's in the staff report, but really a more comprehensive list of everything that the city's done and what departments took part in the activities. This slide shows an overall look at, obviously highly summarized look at what the city has spent in the way of providing services and aid to the community, upwards of $9.3 million. This is citywide, not just the general fund, so it's important to note that, as are the revenues here. The city has brought in approximately $6.7 million, using a total of nearly 2.6 in city assets to address the pandemic, the emergency, and be able to provide services for folks. A lot of these revenues came in the form of either agreements with partnering agencies, other local jurisdictions, or funding from the federal government, various CDBG being one of the large ones. Almost $2 million in CARES Act funding from the state over this last fall. And so that really kind of brings us to that $6.7 million number. Obviously the 9.3, there are a variety of activities, much of which were listed on the slide previously. Some that weren't are, some of the programs that we were able to offer to folks through our housing and community services department. So this is a demonstration of the hours that have been provided. So this is not quantified in dollars necessarily on the previous slide, but this gives an idea of the human hours that were put in specific to COVID-19 relief efforts. Certainly there again are other areas. Much of my time was devoted to helping to navigate the city, financially through the pandemic, but certainly my hours weren't necessarily captured here, as many folks across the city, hours were not. But these are hours that were contributed to the drive-through testing, 12,582 hours. Vaccination efforts here and also, across the county, of almost 3,700 hours. The COVID-19 hotline, which I mentioned earlier, 5,419 hours, and then food distribution of 3,767 hours. Total staff hours above 25,000 hours over the last year. I don't think that there would be anybody in the city who has not been, has not provided some effort towards COVID-19 relief, or the efforts that we have, provided services to the community. So that gives a pretty good rough overview of what we've done. I'm happy to answer any questions that you all might have, discuss anything on it that you might. I'll stop sharing here so that we can see each other, and happy to go through and discuss anything you all want.
Let me just start with a question about why are we seeing this and right now at this meeting? And I mean, my assumption is that this is leading to a discussion at some point of how we're going to use the federal stimulus money and what is and isn't okay. But none of that's in this staff report or on the table for discussion today. So what is the purpose of us seeing this at this time? I mean, what is the plan here?
Yeah, so this has been something that we've sort of perpetually offered council and the finance committee information on throughout the pandemic, bringing it, I think, at about a quarterly clip. To sort of provide updates. Some have been at a much higher level than this. I don't think that, one of the things that we've perpetually heard from the committee is that wanting to get a quantification of some of the human hours that were put in, that the effort that was put into it, and those sorts of things, and a recognition of some of the efforts that were provided to the community. So it's really, an informational report. It's been on the agenda for probably back to nearly 12 months ago, maybe not quite that far, but just a routine item.
So it's not necessarily connected to the fact that we now have the opportunity to recoup monies, but it's a start at least toward looking at what we might be able to recoup and what we can't, because we've already been compensated for some of the effort. Would that be fair to say? Or I mean,
you could draw that conclusion or some of that from this. Certainly that wasn't necessarily the intent in writing the report or providing the information. It does give us an idea of what resources we've used, some of which we can recover for, some of which we have recovered for. I think the staff report probably did a little bit better job of showing what's been used in the general fund versus what has been, the resources that have been devoted with using other funds as the source. But just trying to give the committee an overall view of, the efforts that have gone into dealing with the pandemic and with the resources used to do so.
And the impacts on staff too. That's very, that is informative, that all the staff hours that have gone into this. Okay. Okay. So I'll open it up. Who wants to go first? Or do either of you?
Just for frame of reference. Can I share? So just for frame of reference, that 25,000 hours. So one full-time employee works, if you count up all of the work hours in a year, it's 2,080 hours. So that's how many, just for frame of reference, that's how many hours a full-time employee would work in a regular year. So just for comparison.
So the salaries of that, the monetary value would be like the average salaries of 8 employees, or,
Yeah, no, close to, something like that.
Well, you said, about 3,000, and then you said what, how many hours?
It's going to be closer to probably 12 or 15 employees
okay.
over that time.
All right.
I was going to say, yeah.
We're having a little trouble hearing you, but okay, I'll go. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay, so who wants to, Aisha, Sarah, one of you want to?
I will go because I have nothing nothing nervous or anything to say. I do just want to say, one, I do appreciate this, Director Clausen. I know that I'm sure you're tired of talking about budget around COVID. So thank you for this again.
Never.
Last night, I know we had our conversation about COVID and some of the funding as well. Well, primarily, I do just want to say I appreciate the effort of trying to recoup the amount that we have roughly spent. I know it's hard, and I know it's not going to be dollar for dollar, and I think we've been talking about that for the last year. So I do appreciate that. I also appreciate, just overall how much money we have actually put up to be able to provide services to our residents. I think that is a huge priority and a huge accomplishment to the city. And I've said this multiple times now. I do think it'd be nice to see the analysis against other comparable cities, because I know we are not one of the most affluent cities in the East Bay, yet I think that we do a lot for community, right? And I think that is, to me, that is the pride of Hayward, right? And I genuinely want to highlight that because it's incredibly important to just show that, we wear our heart on our sleeve and we do the work. So I do just want to state it'd be nice to see in like, I know this is going to be presented to the full council, right? So being able to show that, I think that's important. And also, just even some of the points that you highlighted as the sense of like, the rent relief, the slide on all the little things, the little boxes that that kind of highlight St. Rose, the ventilation, things like that. I know city manager, you have worked on that as well in the background. And I know that we did a lot more than this too. So I'm very much excited for you guys to present. And I know I've said this in the big budget meeting as well. But overall, I just wanted to say, when do you think that we would potentially be whole? I know that we are talking about funding coming to us, and they said, at least in the original reports that I was reading, was within I'm going to use the word 90 days that we are supposed to spend and so forth. But it feels like it just keeps moving along, even though they've already approved it. So do we have an estimated timeline?
So essentially, your guess is as good as mine. They have, I mentioned this Saturday, they seem to keep creating hoops for us to jump through. We're jumping through them as soon as we identify them. The original, I believe, was 60 days from the adoption, and they issued their interim final ruling, final rules to sort of, which again, interim and final sort of, those two don't mean the same thing. So whether or not they're final or not, I can't say for certain. My guess is that, sometime before the end of this fiscal year, we should start seeing funding for it. I know as recently as last week, I was informed of the need to create a profile and then request for the funding on the Department of Treasury's website, provided them all of the information that they needed, including bank routing and those sorts of numbers, which is encouraging. That's the first time that I've been asked for it. And, I have no delusion that money would just appear without having to provide that information. So that's certainly fantastic. And, obviously any update that I get on a timeline or when we can expect to see it, I will absolutely provide to the full council. Okay.
And again, I genuinely, even the way the staff report, it's like bulleted in this, not necessarily bulleted, but numbered 1, 2, up to whatever. And I know we have worked on just highlighting some of those things. What was interesting to me, to be completely honest with you, was the Navigation Center Hotel Annex, that project. What was the rough timeline of that? It's been a while, right?
Well, it got up and running incredibly quickly. And I think we've been up since late 2020, I believe, late calendar 2020. So we're 6 months or so into operating, which has clearly been fantastic. I know we've been successful in taking many experience, that are unhoused off of the streets for at least a period of time and offering them a place to stay.
And that was what was interesting to me, because it's 67,925, and if we kind of rough that up to about 6 months, and full year would be 120,000, and I think that was a great 120,000 compared to the rest of the city's budget is, very doable, as we all know. And I would like to hopefully see this moving forward, and our city manager, if that is some type of project that we can consider, because our homeless population is growing, and I know we're working on that significantly. So, and then do we plan on doing anything more for small businesses as they are coming back to work? Because I know we have received a bunch of emails for a wide variety of things asking for support. What does that look like?
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, we are in the process right now. I think we mentioned this on the Economic Development Committee, of doing a survey of businesses to figure out what do they need most? Is it cash to pay back rent? Is it PPE? What is it? And so I think once we get that back, we have allocated a significant amount of stimulus dollars to provide towards small business recovery. So I think once we hear back from the survey results, then we'll be able to tailor the programs to the needs that most businesses have.
Okay. And if we just ensure that we do that through an equity lens and obviously prioritize the ones that did not get the PPP loan, I just want to make sure that we're able to at least do that piece of it. I would also have to say, I know we provided significant money for rental services, to be honest, 1.3 million, or technically 1.38 million. If we can just ensure that, we are also trying to see what happens there. I know a lot of property owners are kind of still concerned as to, some of them want to, evict people. Other people are saying, I still have to pay my own dues, if you will. And others are saying that it's too much to pay at once. So just making sure that we prioritize those things as we move forward in the coming months. Other than that, again, I genuinely appreciate the level of effort in trying to prioritize and separate it from all the other general fund stuff you have to do. So thank you.
Okay, Sarah?
Thank you. So as we say every time, just amazing appreciation, amazing amounts of appreciation for the amazing work that's been done. I'll stop there. Wow. And the one question I had, so on page 3 of the staff report, there was a comment, the city is seeking authorization to pursue cost recovery independent from Alameda County. Can you speak to, authorization from whom or what's going on there?
So,
Thanks.
we are, if you got money, we'll take it.
Right.
And I don't mean that flippantly or like we're some fly-by-night organization, but we are pursuing funding from state, federal, any agency that's offering aid to help us to recover the costs that the city undertook to provide services to the community. We are certainly out there beating the bushes, doing what we can to try to recover as much as possible. A lot of what we have been able to recover for are simply one-to-one dollar expenses for testing kits, for supplies, things like that, but nothing in the way of recovering for the effort that we put forward in the way of the human hours that have gone into providing these services to the community. It's our hope, that we can find it, whether it be through the state or the federal government or another agency that's stepping in to make agencies whole for what they put out.
Sure. No, I support all of that. I'm just in this particular sentence. It sounds like you're seeking authorization from somebody to pursue.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Why was it stated that way, to pursue cost recovery independent from the county? I mean,
is that, that the county's getting money and the city is asking for permission to also ask for recovery, or what's going on?
At some point, the county has told us so at one point we were told by FEMA, go through the county. At another point we were told by the county, you got to go directly to FEMA. And so we have been given the runaround to an extent. I think we are getting through the runaround. But this has been a 6 to 7 month runaround, if you will. Obviously the effort's gone on longer than that. But that's when we started hearing everybody was kind of doing the pointing at the other person and that sort of thing. So, at least early on at some point, FEMA said, we can't talk to you. We can only talk to the county about this. And so it's bureaucracy at its finest.
Fantastic. Well, as we said last night, if there's somebody that council needs to be calling or something, let us know.
Will do.
Okay.
Thanks. I appreciate your advocacy.
Yeah, so this is a good compilation of, to start with. I mean, I think we're all looking at what are we going to do with $38 million, or how are we going to recover $38 million under the rules. I don't know what the rules are. I mean, I know you don't even know what the final ones are, you just said. And I would agree with recouping money in any way we can right now from other sources. I'm wondering, okay, so the monetary, what you've shown us is actual dollars out the door. And then you also showed us staff hours. Those dollars out the door do not, my assumption is they do not include that staff hours, any monetary basis for the staff. I mean, monetary accounting of the staff hours are not included in the dollars that you've shown us here.
That's a correct assumption.
And do you know what the current thinking is on whether the rules on the stimulus money would allow us to recoup staff time?
I do not believe that we can do recover in a direct way for staff hours that have been provided up to this point for COVID-19 efforts. Now, that doesn't mean that the city won't be able to recover in another way for something like lost revenues that will help to offset those costs. But certainly in a one-to-one way where we can say, we had X number of hours that cost us Y, then we get Y out of the 38.5 million.
It is clear that the staff time that was involved was taken away from other things. I mean, we've talked about that. The people last night who were saying you haven't done anything in a year that wasn't true on the policing even, but it was like, do you realize what we've been doing this year and what our staff has been doing? And, we've been helping people in this community. And so I don't know how you monetize that. I mean, another area would be our neighborhood partnership program, which really didn't operate it was kind of shut down because the staff in there were tied up with, especially, Zach, who was a big part of that, and the media and community relations department were very occupied with all the COVID stuff, the volunteer, and then also the messaging. So staff time was taken away from other things we would have been doing. I mean, so I guess I'm just wondering exactly how we are going to use the money that supposedly is available to us, how, and I realize you don't necessarily know the final rules, but what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be used in a variety of different ways. We've got a pretty comprehensive plan that we are going to be, I believe it's going to, and Kelly, correct me if I'm wrong, at least a portion of it's going to the CIC in the coming weeks. It'll be coming to the, sorry,
it's going to CIC next week.
Yeah. And then a more comprehensive version of it will be coming to the full council for council's consideration. And we're still spending a tremendous amount of time making sure that we had a plan as of, I want to say, about a month and a half ago. we have, continued to develop that plan, some of which, developing in that is as we find new regulations, and find that some of the things that we had initially planned that the community really needs, and has a strong desire for, may not be eligible for the use of these funds. And so we are, trying to find next best solutions in those areas. Certainly, as the being the finance director, one of the first things that came to my mind when it seemed as though there were no strings attached to this money, which, knowing the federal government, that rarely exists, but I was still optimistic. One of the main planned uses that we were talking about was going back and funding the OPEB ARC that we had not been able to fund last year because of the pandemic. We've found, as more clarity emerges around the allowable uses, that is not an allowable use. So we can't make payments directly to either a pension fund, the OPEB trust, things like that. That doesn't mean that the city can't use funds that we are able to recover for lost revenues in a discretionary way that would allow us to fund things that we wouldn't be able to fund had we not been able to recover lost revenues. So we can use some of that creatively, and try to fund some of those things. That is, I don't want to say a small portion, but that's only a portion of the funding. A lot of the other funding, we're talking about providing, services in different areas of the community, some the unhoused, some to business recovery, which was mentioned earlier, some to help folks stay in their homes, and not be not lose them for a variety of reasons, and maybe kickstart some other things that we've wanted to do over time but haven't necessarily had funds identified to be able to do. So this should allow us to do some of those things.
Well, I mean, is backfilling lost revenues that clearly can be tied, like, our TOT, the losses in our TOT revenue, clearly tied to COVID. Is that going to be allowable?
Yes, and so it's they have released a formula essentially that says that we can take a baseline year, so the year before COVID, fiscal year 2019, take those revenues times 4.1%, which was the national growth average, and compare those amounts next to what our actual revenues were for fiscal year 2020, and then do the same thing using the adjusted baseline year for fiscal year 2021, and then we can continue to sort of go out. I don't know that we're proposing to do the continuous going out, because I think we could probably make a case to recover all 38.5 million of that, to offset loss of revenues thus far and potentially current or future lost revenues. However, that doesn't necessarily provide the full intent of what these funds were for, to stimulate the economy, to help stimulate the recovery of the community, all of those things. And so we're trying to be as thoughtful in devoting the resources to spread across the different areas that it's intended for and that the community really needs.
It's very confusing, but I'll trust that you'll continue to guide us in what we can and can't do with this money. Money is fungible, so if we lost revenue and that was the reason that we couldn't make our OPEB payment, then obviously if we can recoup that revenue that we lost due to COVID, we can use that money to pay the OPEB, right?
The council can use the money that we recover for lost revenues in a discretionary manner.
Yes, okay. All right, so more to come, I think, is what we're hearing here.
That is accurate, I can assure you.
Okay, so are we ready to move on to our next item, which is?
One second, Mayor. I did
Sure,
want to say that to Director Clausen, I kind of read through kind of what they had on their website. Even their PDF plain text kind of document that's, you know, a little bit harder to read. I think it's fairly straightforward, but maybe if you want to kind of just forward that to the rest of council, just because like I think it clearly says, you know, what we're allowed to use it for, what we're not, and then, you know, the formula and all that fun stuff, you know, you can definitely tell us what we're allowed to do. But for the most part, it was pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I think as far as federal guidelines and regulations, it is fairly easy to understand in comparison to some of the other highly nuanced regulations that you know we see come along with federal funding. It's still emerging, so that's, you know, that's sort of the one thing that we have to keep in mind. The other is, you know, as we are going through and examining some of the things that we had planned, and looking and getting information from, you know, experts, whether it be at the League of California Cities, whether it be the National League, whether it be you know, other experts in the subject matter, just trying to get as much clarity as possible so that we make the best decision possible, and we're not going to find ourselves in a spot where we spent the money on something questionable and the feds come back and say, hey, that's not allowed, you have to give us those funds back, which we saw I would say somewhat rampantly as it was after Hurricane Katrina, quite a bit in many communities that spent and were actually reimbursed by FEMA, who then came back after the fact and disallowed and you know, really crippled some communities because they were forced to either pay the funds back immediately or work out a payment plan. So we want to avoid that and keep our names out of the paper for anything except positive things.
Thank you.
Yes, we do. Yes, it's true. But we want to. And yeah, okay, well, we will, like I said, stay tuned. And I do think the league, yeah, has resources on their website too that we can, the CA Cities. I have to get used to using that new name of the league. You know, okay, well then we can move on to the review and approval of the 21-22 agenda planning calendar.
I can share my screen if you think it's worth it. Really, we've got one additional meeting here, and it's really just kind of a debrief of the budget process. I will just read quickly the three things that are on the non-scheduled future agenda topics that we can certainly discuss now, or if there's anything that the committee would like to add to it, we can do that as well. One being the fleet utilization study, two, community foundation funding, and three, the public banking update.
Well, so are you saying, you know, adding something, you know, choosing something, one of those, or, you know, asking for one or all of those on the July meeting agenda, or what?
No, those are we'll call them bike rack items that we have there, so that we don't sort of forget or lose sight that eventually we need to bring some information back to the committee when it becomes more relevant. You know, I'll use public banking as an example. It's there. We know that there have been some developments. I think we've talked about them a bit. I think we keep it there. So if there are, you know, additional developments, more viability, the intent of the public bank matches up with organizationally and community-wise what we've set as values, then we're going to bring that back to council or the committee, immediately to sort of get direction to see if that's something that we want to engage in. And it's become more viable. They've advanced things, and we're ready to jump in. But it's just so that we don't lose sight of it. Really.
Okay, well, I would like to speak up for the community foundation funding because, we have seen nothing since we started this, this fund, this charitable fund with the East Bay, that's being right now handled by East Bay Community Foundation. That makes me worry because I feel like people aren't, there are ways we could use this fund to raise money for things that we, I'm thinking for one thing of the South Hayward Youth and Family Center, that there are a lot of people who would contribute if they had a way to do that. And they can do that if we create an umbrella, if we create a pot for that in the community foundation. And I know that when we established it prior to COVID without any thought of, that we were going to be entering a pandemic year. But we established it actually for the cannabis revenues to, take 1% of that and then use it for good things in the community. So, that still is something we should be doing. Anyway, we have seen nothing about that. I have no idea what's in it, what is, what we've spent from it, if anything, or who's running it. We have not, we got the East Bay Community Foundation to, set this up for us, but what are we doing with it? And it's, and I just don't know, how we're not really even communicating with the people that have contributed to it, or I don't know if we are. Is anybody writing thank you letters on behalf of, the Hayward community for donations that have been made, or,
Yeah, so Mary Thomas has been managing the relationship with the East Bay Community Foundation. Obviously she's been very involved with the policy innovation workshops and that work over the last few months. Let me check in with her, and I think that's a good, we can do a report out to Budget and Finance if we're looking for an agenda item in July. I think that would be a great item to do. And then we also should talk about, because now that we're actually starting to get cannabis revenue that is significant, that 1% we've got to talk about how we're allocating that and setting up the mechanisms to do that.
Have we used that money for anything? Because, at this point, I don't think we need to use it for COVID aid, since we've got a source of money for COVID.
There was like $350,000, and we brought an item to council last year to allocate the money to most of it went to the family relief grants, the individual family relief grants. Some went to testing supplies, and then about 40,000 went to the Rotary Club to fund small business grants. So I think it was actually closer to almost $400,000 that the council allocated last year. And Mary said it's been a small trickle of donations since then, since that initial grant that we got from the Stupski Foundation of the $350,000 and the initial push for individual donations.
Well, that's not surprising, since we haven't really pushed for continuing donations. And then, okay, we spent money out of this community. I realized that was money given to us for that purpose, for the 350. So that's not money we're going to get back, but we certainly don't need to be using any. I would assume that that's not money that can be replaced through the, or is it? Could we refill the foundation with? No, probably not.
Yeah. The city certainly can't recover because the city didn't recognize any expenses for those funds. That was the community foundation. I don't know whether there's an avenue for them to recover, whether foundations were included in the American Relief Plan Act or not.
I'll just share that the Stupski Foundation, that was a spend down grant. So they were actually trying to spend down their endowment and wrap up the foundation. So that was part of that. That was not, they're not they were not intending to or trying to maintain their endowment or continue it going forward.
Yeah, so, okay. Okay, but so then where does that leave us, and what are we going to do with that fund going forward? I do think we could raise money through that. I mean, we know we're going to get the cannabis, but also just people who, I especially think of the South Hayward Youth and Family Center, that is, you know, we could establish a donation, you know, fund in this community foundation fund for people who would like to donate to help.
Yeah, I just want to, it's not on the agenda, so maybe we should we'll agendize it
You're
for
right.
July.
You're right. Yeah, sorry.
So
Sorry.
let's just be careful how much
Yeah,
we're going to talk.
we are going into discussion of the top. Let's put it on the July agenda though, please.
Yes.
India.
Thank you for that reminder of the Brown Act. Okay, well, with that, then I don't know that we have. I mean, do either of you have any idea? Okay, Sarah, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So yes, I'm supportive of an item on the community foundation whenever Mary gets up her head above water to be able to do that sooner rather than later is fine on that. But yeah, as soon as she can do that, that's great. We had talked about doing a public banking update in July if the new state regulations are available, or the county group has at one point they were looking for a letter of support and, you know, looking to move forward. So if that is, you know, ready, again, if that's ready for prime time, great. If not, then keep it on the future agenda items until, again, it is ready. But it sounds like things are starting to move. So hopefully, again, sooner rather than later, but not until we have a real thing to talk about. I don't want to talk about it just for the sake of talking about it. And then I think we need to, probably not July, but maybe September, talk about the CDBG, the CalPERS updates and what CalPERS is proposing to ask cities for more money again. And what do we want to do about that? And what is the impact of cities and all of that nonsense. Yeah, thanks.
Good suggestion. We will have to talk about that. Aisha?
I don't necessarily have anything. I think I've been supportive, Mayor, to your point. I'm supportive of talking about the community fund, primarily because we did a huge effort to promote and then we had to stop because obviously other things became a priority. And then, you know, obviously I've been in the past supportive of the public banking as well. So I'm fine with those two. And because I'm a little surprised that we don't have things for, like, you know, the next 6 months, Director Clausen, right? It's almost as if, you know, you're like, I'm done. So what is something that you would like to talk about that you haven't necessarily had an opportunity? You're the subject matter expert in our budget and finance, and your team probably has ideas of their own.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, what Councilmember Lambden brought up about the potential change in discount rate will be a game changer for cities. That will, you know, we've seen game changers coming from CalPERS sort of perpetually. We've seen our CalPERS costs related to retirement really skyrocket, frankly, over the last 4 to 5 years. Almost doubling, which is pretty insane given they were not inexpensive previously. And so keeping our eyes on that and knowing the impact that will have on all local agencies. I think the other thing that one item that I think that we may want to at least discuss and eventually could consider is the possibility of trying to finance a portion of our unfunded actuarial liability, which would certainly increase our debt service load. But if we could have a significant portion of those funds in the CalPERS plan, accruing interest, growing in there, meeting the costs, it would lower our annual payments to CalPERS. Now, again, it would be debt service, so there would be additional expenses going out there. But if we could get that at a low interest rate, a rate that we're confident that the fund would accrue more interest at, it's certainly worthy of consideration, and would help us to at least know what we're biting off each year versus perpetual change from CalPERS.
Okay. I would definitely be supportive of kind of having that conversation as well. I know Councilmember Andrews and I have also made some suggestions in the past. I think that would be also appropriate moving forward in the next couple weeks / months.
Sorry, what?
Yeah, suggestions of what?
Budget policy in particular. I think that we've submitted something to our city manager in the past. So
wait a minute. You made a policy suggestion with a council member who's not on this committee for items on this committee?
It's a referral. We have not actually fully.
But is it budget related?
It is policy related.
Is it
well,
budget?
we have a chance to talk about that.
I have not talked to you guys about that. It's supposed to go for the full council. And we're hoping that eventually becomes the.
Well, actually what you should do, Aisha, is bring it up when we actually
eventually do that.
Talk about the budget. We're going to approve the budget. I mean, we had a work session on Saturday. I don't think that we particularly addressed policies, but they are part of the budget. So you should just bring that up. Okay. I mean, it doesn't have to be done as a referral. You should just bring that up when we're talking about, our budget and our budget policies, because we could take action on that,
But if it's budget related, we're not supposed to be talking to any of our colleagues about budget policy.
Okay, so I have worked with our city manager. It has not been presented. I have not talked about this particular item with anybody here on this board.
That's my point.
Yeah,
and so it probably shouldn't be something that comes to this committee, but but I would suggest that you bring it up when we talk about the budget at council. If you talk to you and Councilmember Andrews,
So I don't disagree with the bring up items related to the budget when we talk about the budget. What I'm concerned about is we are the budget committee, the three of us. Therefore, the three of us are not legally allowed to talk about budget items with any of the other four.
We are not allowed to talk about a budget item. Technically, we're allowed to talk about policy. And like I said, suggestion of policy, it would be a citywide policy. We do this in regards to housing as well. So city manager, would you like to chime in on any of this?
It seems that she either doesn't or she's incapable of doing that. I'm not sure which. I'm not hearing. Oh, there she is. She's
sorry. Yes. What was I'm sorry, it cut out there for a second. What was the question, Councilmember?
Talking about city policy or city, city policy, eventually adopting city policy regarding kind of budgetary type of focus.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the Brown Act question that Councilmember Lambden is raising, I'd have to ask the city attorney, because I mean, I don't remember the exact words in the referral memo, but I don't know that it was being referred to the Budget and Finance Committee, which might have been problematic. I think it was just asking the council as a whole to consider policies.
I don't understand why you wouldn't bring it up when we're talking about that very thing.
We did bring it up to the mayor. We did bring it up. We remember the last meeting we had full council. I want to say in like February, maybe it was March, but I want to say it was February, maybe late January. But the last 6 months, we did kind of talk about it on the full city council.
So if it relates to budget, to financial policies of the city, we have a set of those, and they are part of the budget, and they are part of what we talk about when we do the budget annually. So bring it up on
Okay.
June 1st.
All right, I will.
Just bring it up and we'll discuss it. And, and if it's something that needs further action to come back, that, that can happen. It doesn't necessarily, I don't even know what you're talking about. So, but it wouldn't have to be necessarily tied to the vote we take on the budget, but you should bring it up because that is when we talk about the budget.
Yeah. And I know you've mentioned it in the past as well. And I know, for example, even the policing issue that has been specifically dedicated for this budget and finance committee. I know multiple council members have talked about it and submitted stuff when we're on this council and subcommittee together. So I just want to highlight that.
Not since it became our budget item. I mean, the referral, if you're referring to the referral that that we did, that happened before this body became the policymaking body around the policing. So, we probably need to talk to Michael, but the question, our practice had been, if it is a subject matter for a committee, then the committee members are not legally allowed to talk to any of the other four on that subject matter. So economic development people can't talk about economic development stuff. The three of us can't talk about housing stuff. I mean, the three of us can't talk about budget stuff, housing stuff,
I would suggest that we maybe just talk to the city attorney about this and get an opinion on what can and can't be talked about amongst, if it is, does it have to be an actual agendized item at committee versus trying to figure that out amongst ourselves here this afternoon. So
and I think my point is that when you have an idea about something that is what is a subject of an agenda item, bring it up then, bring it up, and then the whole council can talk about it because we're all there. And although, I mean, if it's related to the item that we're talking about, we can talk about it. And we can give direction to staff to bring something back to us if that's what's going to be required, or, that's what to do. I think what I'm saying is you don't have to, this isn't the legislature, and
it's just the way our process has
when
been.
we're talking about those things if it's a whole new thing, that's different. That is what the referral process is through.
It is a new thing, and it was, my suggestion has always been for the full council, and then eventually we figure out, what we're doing in regards to details.
Well,
to agendize the
if it has to do with budget policies or financial policy of the city, that is something that is part of our budget. It's in there, and therefore that is something you should bring forward when we're talking about the budget.
Okay. In the next couple of weeks when we're adopting the
June
budget.
1st. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. With that. But yeah, I think, and the Brown Act can be, difficult. And I think we have to, watch, not overly, overly being worried about the Brown Act. This is a public meeting, and we, but anyway, we did not talk about, we don't even know whatever it was that you're talking about. So we didn't talk about it, but what we're talking about is process and when something should come up. And I'm just saying, if that's what that was, then it's something having to do with financial policies of the city, that is a part of the budget. And that's when we should be having the discussion. And we do include that. I mean, usually people don't have all that much to say about it, but about the policies, but we have changed them over the years. And, we have a pretty good set of policies. It's pretty explicit. So, okay. And then I think that brings us, anything else on future agenda items, which I think then brings us to announcements, staff, committee member announcements. Anyone? Okay, with that brings us to adjournment and dinner, hopefully, and an earlier bedtime tonight, hopefully, than last night. But I think there are really big bags under my eyes today. So anyway, with that, thank you all. And
thank you.
see you, well, the next meeting.